Okay, so today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of Bob Camblin.
All right.
Now, he's a fascinating artist. I think we can agree on that. And I think one of the things that makes it so fascinating is that he's kind of intentionally a little mysterious.
Yes. A bit of an enigma, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Much like some of his artwork itself,
Yeah.
which is, I think, part of what makes it so compelling. But thankfully, you, our listeners, have given us a really great collection of materials to kind of go through and unpack here. We've got direct quotes from Camblin himself,
Oh, wow.
excerpts from various books that have been written about him or his work, a pretty thorough biography, a YouTube analysis of one specific painting called Feste, Venezia, and even some really insightful book reviews.
That's fantastic.
So our mission today is to look at all these things together and see if we can pinpoint some core ideas or recurring themes that emerge and kind of help you guys get a deeper understanding of his work and the kinds of questions he's asking through his art.
That sounds like a very achievable goal with all of this source material to work with.
I think so. I think
Mm.
so. So let's start with this. We mentioned he was an intentionally enigmatic figure. What what else jumps out at you about his reputation as an artist?
Well, he was clearly talented. I mean, that's evident in everything we've been given.
Yeah.
But he also seemed to deliberately cultivate a distance from the mainstream art world, while being highly respected by his peers and intensely sought after by collectors.
Right, like he was admired, but on his own terms.
Precisely. It's a fascinating paradox.
It is. And then there's the fact that his works are pretty scarce, which just kind of adds to the whole mystique.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about his life a little bit. He was born in 1928, got his start at the Kansas City Art Institute, and then lands this Fulbright scholarship to Italy, which seems to have had a huge impact on him.
Yeah, Italy in the 50s for an artist like Camlin must have been incredible.
I can only imagine. And after that, he spent a good chunk of his career teaching at different universities before making this really radical decision in 1976.
What's that?
He decides to just become a full-time nomadic artist.
Wow, so he just drops the stability of academia to wander and create. That's really
It
something.
really is. It speaks to a serious dedication to his craft.
Absolutely. And you can see how this rejection of a fixed existence might have influenced his later explorations of impermanence and the idea of life as this constant flow.
It's like he needed that freedom to fully immerse himself in his own vision.
Yes, definitely. Now, speaking of his vision, we should talk about the range of media he worked in.
Oh yeah, he didn't limit himself at all, did he?
Not at all. Our sources mention oils, acrylics, watercolors, drawings, prints, even painted paper.
It seems like he was more interested in the concept and then letting that dictate the form it took.
Exactly. The medium was secondary to the idea itself.
So there's this one quote of Camblin's that really struck me, and it kind of gets at the heart of his approach to the world.
Okay, I'm curious.
He said, and I'm quoting here, "I stick with common sense and the perfectly average view and enjoy miracles in both science and magic, hoping for a bright gray where they meet." What do you make of that?
It's certainly not your typical artist statement.
Not at all.
Right. But I think what he's getting at is this idea that he's not interested in seeing things as black and white or confining himself to one way of thinking.
Yeah, it's like he wants to embrace those liminal spaces where things get a little blurry.
Exactly. And this early articulation of his worldview really resonates with some of the later analyses of his work, particularly the Feste Venezia analysis.
Oh, absolutely.
That painting really embodies this idea of embracing paradox.
Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
For our listeners who haven't seen the painting, can you give us a little visual tour?
I'd be happy to. So imagine this. A swirl of rich colors, vibrant yellows, oranges, blues, and greens rendered with loose, almost gestural brushstrokes. Then, in the upper portion of the canvas, you have these large red-brown letters spelling out Feste against a luminous gold background.
And underneath those letters is a form suggesting a crystal skull.
Yes, but it's not a gruesome depiction at all. It's rendered in these beautiful jewel tones with layers of pink lavender and fiery orange.
So not your typical skull imagery.
Not at all. Then in the lower part of the painting, you have this more fully realized skull shape, but it's translucent, and you can see a scene of the Venetian lagoon through it. The water, the architecture, the whole vista.
And scrawled across the bottom edge is the word Venezia.
Right, in this casual stylized script, almost as an afterthought. And then on the left side, partially obscured by some greenery, is this small solitary figure standing near the skull.
That layering of imagery is so striking. The festive lettering juxtaposed with the skulls the vibrant Venetian scene contained within this symbol of mortality.
It's as if he's collapsing these traditional dualities like life and death, joy and sorrow.
Exactly. And that's where that idea of the bright gray comes in. It's not about choosing one over the other, but finding the space where those seemingly opposite concepts coexist and even illuminate each other.
It makes you think of those Zen koans, those paradoxical riddles that are meant to break down your usual way of thinking.
And speaking of Zen, the analysis of Feste Venezia really emphasizes that perspective, right?
It does. It talks about how festivals and death are not actually opposing forces, but different facets of the same underlying reality.
Yeah, like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. And it connects the painting to the I Ching's hexagram 56, The Wanderer, which is all about transience and the fleeting nature of beauty.
So we have this celebration happening, this vibrant city, but it's all temporary. Everything is constantly changing and flowing,
Right. And then there's the Taoist perspective, which emphasizes the importance of going with the flow rather than clinging to the banks.
like learning to ride the waves of change instead of resisting them.
Precisely. And then the secular Buddhist viewpoint adds another layer, talking about how meaning is something that we construct and eventually discard.
So the festival, the city, the skull, they don't have inherent meaning, but we imbue them with significance through our shared cultural understanding.
Exactly. And just like that fragmented text in the painting, meaning itself becomes something that's created and let go of.
Which ultimately leads us to the big questions the painting poses. What is the feeling of this festival? What happens when the lights go out, so to speak? And what kind of poster would you create for your own life?
Those are some pretty powerful questions.
They are. They make you think about how you're actually living your life and whether it aligns with the story you want to tell.
So going back to Camblin himself, he had this really interesting concept of the mystic switch.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
It's this idea that each of us has this personal sense of truth, something that gives us that rising hackle or visceral knot feeling.
Like a gut instinct or intuition.
Exactly. And he believed that this switch isn't fixed but evolves over time.
It's about being aware of those internal signals and trusting them.
And importantly, he emphasized the need to learn how to truly see, not just look.
Like moving beyond superficial observation and really engaging with the world around you.
Exactly. And he said that the very act of process and awareness can't be a failure because it's all about the journey of perception.
It's a shift in focus from achieving a specific outcome to embracing the process of discovery itself.
I think that's a really powerful way to look at it.
And then there's his idea of the artist as the only free agent.
Yes, unburdened by any commitments except those chosen out of desire.
It makes sense given his decision to embrace that nomadic lifestyle.
Absolutely. And it ties into his concept of the ecology of art, this idea that artists who are truly doing their own thing are actually contributing to a greater balance, even if it seems self-indulgent.
It's like they're adding their unique voice to the larger chorus.
Exactly. And he was a big believer in collaboration, too. His partnerships with Earl Staley and Joe Tate under the names B&E Productions and the Holding Firm really challenged that traditional notion of the solitary artist.
And then there's his practice of signing works as anonymous or anonymous artists.
Which speaks to a desire to move beyond individual ego and emphasize the collective nature of creation.
Exactly. And we can't forget about Muchas Volantes, the style he developed with Nancy Giordano.
Oh yes, those mesmerizing compositions with the dots and dashes that create optical illusions.
It's like he's playing with our perception, making us question what's real and what's an illusion.
And challenging us to actively engage with the artwork.
It's like he's engaging in this playful guerrilla warfare on our word-oriented culture by embedding puzzles, codes, and traps into his drawings.
It's as if he's saying, look closer. There's more here than meets the eye.
And he was quite critical of how words could sometimes obscure the direct experience of art.
Referencing Tom Wolfe's The Painted Word.
Exactly. So when we see text in his paintings, it might be a clue, or it might just be a shape adding another layer of ambiguity.
He really wanted to make people think.
So let's talk about his artistic evolution a bit. Early on, he was interested in social protest, drew inspiration from artists like Cremoni and Etruscan figurines.
And of course, his time in Italy had a profound impact on him.
Oh yeah, you can see those influences from the Uffizi, the Capuchin catacombs, even Botticelli.
And remember that little tribute to KPFT radio and his version of Birth of Venus?
Oh yeah, that's a great example of how he layers those references. And over time, his work shifted from those early Bruegel-inspired drawings to more organic abstract forms,
reflecting his growing fascination with the cyclical nature of life and themes of metamorphosis.
And he was always experimenting with techniques, blending drawing and watercolor in really innovative ways.
It's a testament to his constant desire to push boundaries.
And even his views on teaching and exhibiting were unconventional.
He believed that artists needed control over the environment in which their work was displayed.
Minimizing distraction so that the art could speak for itself.
And he had some strong feelings about painting for money.
Yeah, he really valued artistic integrity, faith in one's work, and the creative process itself.
His Scarecrow series, inspired by Gunter Grass, is a great example of his thematic evolution.
Starting as symbols of renewal, they morphed into these mythical figures incorporating lobster and larva shells.
It's that theme of metamorphosis, again, this exploration of life's mysteries through an evolutionary and psychological lens.
So towards the end of his life, he moved to the Oregon coast and then Louisiana with his wife, Nancy.
And he had less contact with his friends back in Houston.
But thankfully, there were still efforts to organize shows of his work even in those later years.
Which speaks to the enduring impact of his art.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways about Bob Camblin?
Well, he was an artist deeply engaged with paradox, impermanence, and the power of questioning.
His work encourages us to look beyond the surface, to embrace ambiguity, and to participate in the creation of meaning.
And his life as a nomadic artist dedicated to his craft is a testament to his unconventional path.
I hope this deep dive is giving you guys some things to think about, maybe spark some curiosity to explore his art further.
Absolutely.
I know it has for me. And one last thought. Camblin really challenged us to create our own poster for life, to figure out what symbols and truths are important to us, and then actually live by them.
It's a call to action to really examine our lives and make sure we're telling the story we want to tell.
Exactly. So maybe the biggest lesson we can learn from him is to not get too caught up in finding definitive answers, but to stay open to the endless possibilities of seeing and knowing.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
So next time, keep exploring.
And keep questioning.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Okay.
See ya. Bye.